first decided to go to Peru, I knew Abraham back then because he had been doing ceremonies. And I remember him telling me, I asked him something really stupid, and he told me, listen, you're going to be on like a journey, and that journey is not going to be what you expect. And it's not going to like go the way you think it's going to go, because this is a path, it's spirit that decides. It's not going to be you. And that proved very much to be the case. It was like a rude awakening or a shock awakening as soon as I got to Peru. Would you guys agree, or what are your thoughts that, for a long-term student of the medicine, it's not going to be what you expect?
Hands down, yeah. I mean, and after doing it for a long time,
totally agree.
That's why I love the medicine. That's why I am, kind of married to it. I don't really do other plant medicines, Ayahuasca and dietas, but it just has so much depth. I could spend, 20 lifetimes.
Mm-hmm.
I think it throws you, sometimes, no matter how much experience you have, it knocks you out of your zone.
Right.
Takes you by surprise for sure.
But so obviously we've talked before, and you've had like some big, I guess you would call it, curves on the road. So things you didn't expect, and you had to manage to surpass that in some way. But looking back upon it now, can you kind of connect the dots and see what the lessons were, or what was really happening, or how it helped you evolve, things like that?
Yeah, I think in Chinese, are you practicing Chinese medicine, Skye?
No, I'm not. I did 3 years of a traditional apprenticeship, which was like a kind of one-on-one apprenticeship. And then South Africa introduced new laws saying that I would have to go and do a pre-med degree if I ever wanted to practice professionally. So I chose to leave the apprenticeship and go to Peru and study Curanderismo instead. So yeah, I would have been another 4 or 5 years in apprenticeship to finish. But yeah, the foundation that I have got has been the foundation of so much that's come afterwards.
Yeah, I studied Chinese medicine too. My first teacher that I mentioned earlier is an acupuncturist and doctor of Chinese medicine. So I was just going to say, it was a very twisty, turny road learning, and still is. And but in Chinese medicine and Chinese theory, you have this idea of yan will and yin will, and the yan will, is kind of more in the moment. This is my understanding. I could be totally wrong, but I'm not a Chinese philosopher. Well, maybe I am. But yin will can only be seen when you look back, after a long body of time. There's a certain type of thread that runs through it all. And so when I look back now, it all seemed like a straight line to here, at the time it didn't, so yeah, I mean, it all makes sense now, kind of.
Yeah.
I mean, the biggest thing for me was ethics, ethics and stuff. First, I don't know, who I am. That's how I was kind of, I don't know. That's just something that's always been important to me. Even from my early psychedelic experiences, I had like those revelations, and I was like, oh, it's not like what you do, just what you do in life. It's like also what you don't do in life, that matters. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of my paths and my twists and turns had to do with like trying to maintain this like kind of standard of ethics. And it's not, to a relative child in ceremony land, some things probably looked a lot more bigger than they were really. more unethical, more severe than when I look back, I was like, I overreacted a few times and, was harsh, and I learned from that too. But I just have this idea that I became what I was pursuing. And sometimes that involved a lot of change, whether it be moving, and spending time with one family or another one for a period of time because of this drive towards something, like a hunter, that hunts deer becomes more like a deer, so I was hunting something, and a lot of those twists and turns had to do with what appeared to be dead ends or changes. People change too, right? Like you can have a great maestro who's heals you a ton, and then over time maybe something happens and they become darkened, and you have to you either stay there and kind of absorb some of that or move on. In some ways I'll say I regret that kind of thinking now. I think I could have balanced both, possibly, probably. I think I was pretty young. I didn't know, that I could sit in proximity to someone like that and not. It doesn't mean I'm going to become that, But same time, the medicine was also telling me, to be careful what I ingest, to be careful what lessons I take, because, I'm not one to get strung out on being pure or like a puritanist about it all, but some things you don't want mixed. You want clear medicine that's not like a mixture. It's like a jar of water and sand, and you shake it up, and it's like a mixture, right? That's the vision, the actual vision that came to me when I would like have to part ways with someone for a while. Because I had a dead set agenda in my learning, which I think is very key too, which is that I want to learn how to heal people. I want to be able to help people, and everything I learned had to be framed in that context of becoming a healer. So the question in ceremonies and dietas is like, how does this serve that? How does that serve my clients? There was these messages kind of early on in the training that were like, what you want, to be able to like heal the way you want, you can't have a mix. It just, what you want cannot exist side by side of certain things. And it was just, it was put to me really clearly and simply. So when I saw those things, I'd part ways for a while, for a bit, which sometimes looking back, I think it was, could have been modulated a little bit, it was a little youthful and brash, youthful folly from the I Ching. Because you can love someone and deeply love someone and still insulate yourself from certain energies or something,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I remember you once mentioning to me that there were some people that you chose to move on from because they wanted to teach you how to defend yourself. And you felt that, defending yourself in the Mariación, you felt was like crossing the line. That's the first step towards, attacking someone, which is the kind of maybe the opposite side of the coin. Do you feel like going into that? Like, what? I don't even know what that means actually, to defend yourself. Because I guess I just always took the advice that, healing yourself to the core really deeply is just the best way to move on from anything strange that might be happening, that you feel are coming from some external source. Because in the end, it's always somehow internal. But what were they actually talking about when they said they wanted to teach you to defend yourself?
Well, this is a concept of shitana. The shitana is kind of weapons of the medicine, of weapons of ayahuasca. You could say kind of there's a lot of good things and there's some bad things. So it's a lot harder to use shitana on people if you don't have shitana. It's a lot harder to accidentally fire away a dart or such things. There's a lot of overlaying kind of our concept of what the medicine should be on top of what it is or what it was. There's a kind of just our relationship to nature in a lot of ways is very colonial. We think about the English park, right? This nature, the woods out here where I live, there's nothing going to kill me out there. I could go walking through that forest day in and day out. But people didn't do that 200 years ago, 250 years ago. It's only because it's been kind of decimated by human beings that we can think of it as a mother nature that is soft and embracing and nursing us. It's something to be feared and to be revered, right? It's like COVID right now, right? Some people believe it's man-made. That's just because they don't believe that the earth can kill you anymore. That never went away. I mean,
I totally agree.
Yeah. Point being is, in the day, people used the medicine for a lot more than issues of meaning and existential needs, right? They used it for very practical reasons. They used it for hunting. They used it for healing, which is important for the cohesion of a tribe, for the survival of a tribe, to have people be healed, to have them be psycho-spiritually healed, for sure. But they also used it for fighting their enemies. We think of how colonialists call a lot of native peoples savages, right? But a lot of their warfare was magical in nature, and barely ever, a lot of these skirmishes, they people got wounded. You probably have 30 people versus 40 people or something, and 3 guys would get cut up real bad and dragged off back home. Or that was some of it. I'm sure there was other ones that were more fierce, but some of it was also magical warfare. In comparison to the United States, for example, our vision of warfare, right? So a lot of Westerners balk at the idea of magical warfare when all the ground we stand on was gained by it, was gained through aggression and violence and oppression, right? So they had their form of that, and it took place in a spiritual realm. So that power still exists, and the teaching on the street, so to say, is that it's easy to come by. It's the low-hanging fruit, as they say. Pancho, Luzmila, they would say that the shitanas get presented first in the diets and in the mariación. The shitanas get presented first, and they say, hay que pasar. You have to pass it. You have to pass it. You pass it. You keep climbing to the higher fruit, right? That's where the medicine is.
Right.
So what certain people were saying is, you need to learn the old way. You need to learn how to defend yourself from shamanic attack. And you're right about having to do with ourselves in such a way is that the way a lot of like brujeria works is it preys upon things that we have within us, or it resonates with things that we have inside of us. It's like a resonant frequency that like shakes something in you that's already there, and it's like almost a self-sabotaging vicious cycle type thing. So yeah, doing your own healing and stuff like that, you know, yeah, hands down, it is a way to manage that stuff. But anybody who's been like attacked for real by someone skilled in it, which is different than your neighbor's cousin who read like a book on something and then is like making spells, you know, someone who's like seriously trained as a shitanero. I mean, they can work you. You feel it. You experience it. And anybody I think who's had it happen to them knows that it's like, it's for real. So
Yeah.
I had a teacher that said I had to be able to defend myself, you know, that was part of it. And I said, I don't want to learn that, you know. And he said, I remember one time we were super Mariel in the Mariacion, and he says, and he gets, at this point, he's like frustrated with me. He's like, look, I'm not telling you to run around town with the knife in your hand, man. I'm telling you to put this shit in your bag and keep it in your bag, you know, and like you only pull it out when you need it, you know. It's like, why don't you get this, you know? So.
And so did you ever like learn it, or yeah, I'm curious.
No, and I was very like judgmental too, you know, like at the time. I think, you know, that's a worldview, and it is like a old way. It's like a place where the jungle is like either having sex with itself or killing itself. I mean, it's all happening at the same time, right? So it's like a lot of love and a lot of murder. I can't argue with that existence, you know. So I don't, and I'm lucky that I don't have to. Well, we'll see what happens in the U.S. now, but you know that on a day-to-day, I don't have to think in such a way. But no, I didn't learn it. I did not want to learn it. Partially because I had warnings from kind of teachers in the ceremony in the Mariacion. I have teachers in the Mariacion that gave me rules right from the beginning. I mean, I was told I was going to run ceremony like my third ceremony, and it laid out like, this is how it will be, this is what you do, this is what you can't do, this is, you know, this whole thing. And then Pancho really echoed it when I met him. He says, you're going to learn very quick, and you're going to learn how to pass the shitanas for the medicines, you know, for the medicine. And he said, siempre rechaza la shitana, Michael. Always refuse it, you know, right? His words, I mean, I can remember everything he said to me, you know, and that especially. So when that stuff presented itself, someone was trying to teach it to me, at Pancho right there, you know. He laid it out for me like a 16-year-old getting their driver's license, don't drink and drive. Okay. You know. So.
Yeah, and it's also interesting to me because probably people who know how to do bad stuff would not consider themselves shitaneros, right? So I would imagine, you know, there may be a few, you know, like really rotten people, but I would think they would also consider themselves curanderos, who can just defend themselves or maybe occasionally cross the line when they feel it's necessary. So
it's arguable if it's a line.
Yeah.
You know, like I've seen a shaman use shitana to attack someone, and it was the guy was beating his daughter and beat her really bad, and might have led to her death. She died, and you know, some people would argue with whether that deserved attack or not, you know. And there are, I mean, being a shitanero is like a profession too. It's not considered. It's not like someone answers a classified ad and is like, now hiring Darth Vader. You know, it's like it's a profession and like a service. It's considered a service. It's like going to the posangueros or posangueras, you know, the love magic, or going to the shitanero, someone's giving you trouble, or going to the curandero. You know, there's classifications, and I don't know about. I can't really like judge other people. I just know, like, for me, like I said early on, I was told, like, for what I want, I have to follow a certain path.
Yeah, and it seems to be a really slippery one. I was just not too long ago, I was talking to the son of a really famous maestro in Peru that a lot of people still diet with. They go to him. And the son, he's Peruvian. And he said, you know, once I was giving a ceremony in Lima, and I noticed that there was another ceremony happening, you know, somewhere nearby. And from there came like a virote, an arrow launched into my ceremony. So, and it entered my ceremony. So I just sent it back, straight back to where it came from. And then I never heard from him again. And, you know, one way you could look at that is, well, maybe he shouldn't have done that, because that would be considered on maybe an attack, and he crossed the line. I mean, what? So it's, you know, I don't know if you would consider that shitana. I think it sounds kind of bad what he did, but what are your thoughts on kind of examples like this?
I mean, I don't believe in sending it back. You know, I know how to deal with virotes without sending it back. Not to say I'm an open target for everybody. No, I'm just kidding. But this one doesn't sting back. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, I think that's, you know, in some traditions, that is when you become a full-fledged shaman, you know. You defeat your rival. I mean, how many stories is that? You know, the hero with 1,000 faces. You know, how many legends and myths have to do with defeating your rival in order to pass on to like some kind of level of service to your community, to your place, right?
But I was asking him about pruebas, tests during Dieta. And, you know, one test would certainly be like healing related tests. Maybe they're all healing related tests, you know, in the end. But one is healing related tests. So really kind of being triggered or going into, you know, parts of yourself that you maybe don't want to, or doesn't feel very pleasant, or, you know, whatever it might be. So there's kind of healing tests during Dieta. And then I guess there's tests which, you know, I personally don't think am too familiar with, at least that I can remember, which is what you talked about, the shitana. And I'm not sure what that would really be like. You know, my guess is it's probably not something so like stereotypical where, you know, this kind of evil looking man appears in your mariacion and says, I have some powers for you, you know, do you accept these powers? And it's like very easy to say no. It's probably not so easy and clear cut. So can you talk a little bit about maybe some tests during Dieta that you've gone through, and you know, how to navigate that?
Yeah, I mean, all of it seems like a test. None of them were ever unpleasant, but no, I'm just kidding. But there, you know, sometimes it is kind of stereotypical. I've done Dieta where in the beginning I had like a dream of a Shipibo kid, like really innocent Shipibo kid, walk up to me, and he had like the tela, you know, the Shipibo fabric with the embroidery, and he opened it up and he's like, "This is a gift for you," you know. and it was a big pistol, like a, and it had like gems on it and like the patterns, and it was like all beautiful, you know. And it was like, you know, you take this, and then I was like, you know, confused in my dream, and no, you know, wake up and like what, you know, not even know. I didn't know in the moment if it was shitana. You know, I didn't. It's not like I woke up and was like, oh, that was shitana, and I just passed that. You know, it wasn't until days, weeks later, when we closed diet and I'm drinking the medicine, I'm like, oh, that's what that was. You know, it's like, because a lot of people want power. You know, um, a lot of people feel powerless, and maybe some people have been victimized by that, or um, fear of loss. You know, I think a lot of people really just want love and attachment, and how that happens becomes confused sometimes. But power is one way to feel secure in that, and that can run pretty deep. But you know, there are power. I do think that there's power involved in the medicine work, but there are other kinds of powers. You know, like, but those kind of come easy. So if you're too eager, you can end up kind of gaining things like that. You know, that's the thing about kind of not taking shitana in the first place, is like, you might be cool, you might be able to control it, you might be able to handle it and keep it in your bag and not use it and all that. But it's when the passions arrive, right? It's when like something goes wrong or something heavy happens, or like what was happening with that story you told me, you know, where it comes out and it can fly out just automatically, you know. That's why it's just better not to have it.
Yeah.
You know, no accidents happen.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I just feel like it was test after test after test, man.
When I talk to you, and I've talked to you over time for a while now, and I also get this when I talk to other Westerners who have really gone far down on this path and now work as curanderos or maestros. It's like on the one hand, it's like very rational and kind of like I don't know how to say it, like seeing things as they are, and almost like a scientific mind, but yet at the same time having a very magical mind and being very open to kind of everything at the same time. So it's like people who seem good curanderos, Westerners have learned this, seem to be able to gracefully blend the two without it becoming like a contradiction. And people, at least from what I've noticed, people who are like really spiritual and kind of believe in everything, and you know, they feel like they're channeling from, you know, another galaxy on Friday and doing Reiki this day, you know, like they also do the dietas, but maybe they get a little bit kind of lost in a lot of their magical, you know, tendencies. And at the same time, you know, people who are super rational, they also have a tough time. So it seems like you have to be a blend of the two. And I feel like you have that characteristic, and I see the characteristic come up. Do you, when you look at yourself, do you feel, are there certain traits that you think have really helped you?
Whew. I think learning this path is a lot of stretching, you know. And you're stretching high and low, you're stretching light and dark, you're seeing a bigger picture, which sometimes isn't always just light, sometimes you're seeing dark, sometimes, you know, it's expanding, right? And so in that, you're expanding between heaven and earth. And if you, like I said, you know, originally, if your intention is to be a healer, to and I mean healer in you know, psycho-spiritual religious type sense, you know, not just, I don't want to make it seem like I'm talking about just like I'm a bone setter, you know. It's more of it's ancient religion. If you're going to do that, you have to learn to walk in both worlds. If that's not your agenda, it don't matter what you do. You can just live in the stars. You can live on the earth. You can, but if you're gonna really um, have people come and get well and leave and have good lives, you have to be pragmatic and you have to be magical, and think about where this medicine was coming from. I mean, on an evolutionary point of view, as a culture, as a people, there's certain situations in the jungle. It's like one false move, right? And like it's like you could lose a whole ethnic group or a whole tribe or a whole identity. Things are in careful balance. So the ones who could travel the farthest could also root down the most deep, because that was required. It was required. And I learned that from, the Shipibo are very practical. They're very practical people. And they don't have rigid boundaries. So they're very good at spotting things that are pragmatic, earthly, and using it to their magical advantage. But I think you go too far one way or the other, it's a little bit of you suffer for it, And there's just a little bit taking ourselves too seriously, right? If you're just too material, you're kind of taking yourself too serious in that sense. If you're too like space oriented, then you're kind of taking yourself a little too seriously there too,
Right.
I mean, I have 10 ounces of doubt I always keep in my back pocket,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. 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 Same as me. I've always got my little inner skeptic,
And it's good, right? I mean, think about when really bad things occur in the world or, in life. They always come with such certitude, huh? So I don't know how correct I am, but I look at the word shitana and I kind of combine she and dana, and I'm pretty sure she is like a, and Shipibo is like a, I think it's susto, I think it's fright. There's another way of saying it too, is like fear is like rakashina, but I put she and Tana together, and I think it's like Tana means to try or provar, to take. So I think it's like taking fright, to take fright. So ultimately, a lot of shitana is about creating fear, and because that starts a cycle, and it debilitates the target.
Right. Right.
In the more Quechua lineage, we'd sing songs about how the devil brujo was lying, and we're gonna close down the fright, the fear that he's sowing.
Right.
I think what does fear do? It like lays people out, right? Kind of paralyzes. Get that threat response. So I think that's what a lot of it's about. I think, although I don't want to give the impression too that it's all always just in the mind, because I've definitely seen some shit like that wasn't just in my mind, as far as shitana. Once I was in a ceremony with Luzmila, actually, Michael, and I went outside, and there was this owl, which are like, really pretty bad omens, like to a lot of native tribes, especially up here where I live. But there was an owl outside, and then I got filled with like just fear. I mean, it just like took me over, and I started to try, go back inside, and this thing started getting louder and louder and louder and screeching, and then it was laughing, a woman's laugh. Okay, come inside, and I'm like, Luzmila and Jorge are singing, and I come inside and I tap Luzmila, and she turns around, she's like, yeah, what's up? And I was like, told her, I was like, there's some owl outside laughing at me. And she turned around, and I mean, her eyes got big, and she like saw it, heard it, like everything, and she smacked Jorge really hard on his shoulder, and he turns and looks at her, and she's like, Popo. And man, he just changed his whole song, and he just turned his body towards this thing and started cranking out, man. And it was just like, I mean, it was just this heavy Icaro. And this owl I could hear struggling outside and like getting pushed further and further and further and further and further away until it was just gone, And
Wow.
I was like, sure, okay, I was tripping pretty hard. Maybe, I just was hearing some stuff. But I had recorded the ceremony. I went back and listened to the ceremony, and it's on the recording. I could hear the same thing, this woman laughing from this owl, dude. It's like, so that's just one example, like that stuff we don't have it all figured out. So anything can happen.
So I didn't catch the early part of the story, but the owl was what, like a bruja or an entity, or just kind of a...
Yeah, that was a bruja. They knew who it was and stuff, I think. But I was just saying that I think oftentimes the effect of shitana and such is to strike someone with fear. And but then I was also saying that doesn't mean I think it's all in people's head. That
Right.
People have definitely gotten sick or like injured or strings of bad luck. And I've had plenty of people come to me with heavy shitana on them that was like more than just in their head,
So when you sit with a patient and you see that there's been something put on them, how do you perceive that? Do you see it like in a vision, or kind of just dark energy, or in your variación, I mean?
A lot of different ways. I mean, sometimes it's like a vision, but it doesn't even really have to be that elaborate. I mean, you're working with a lot of people. I mean, I don't have time. Sometimes it's like a vision for that would be very. That'd take some creative juices from. Sometimes it's just knowing.
Yeah.
It's just I used to hear a lot. Like narration. Sometimes I'd hear Pancho talking to me a lot, like, oh, this person, it's like this happened. But also, healer learns how to be empathetic, right? Where your whole body is just like the diagnostic instrument, So I bring someone in front of me, and I'd start having these thoughts a certain way and this feeling a certain way, and that's why it takes training too, is because people get taken over by that stuff, and they don't know how to. If you don't put in a lot of time, you don't know how to separate yourself from like that kind of thing, and then so you take that on, and you can feel it, and then you could tell what it is, especially with experience, and then you just start to undo it, and you can feel it when it leaves. So there's that, and then sometimes, I mean, it's not like you always know either. Sometimes you just clean something up and like things work out better. I was gonna say too, that's like as far as like the trees too, on a similar subject is like some trees having like heavy shitana or some trees to be avoided, right? You could say that it doesn't really matter, but how would you know? Like, there are people that expose themselves to certain things that get taken off their path, and there's not like a big neon sign that comes down and says, hey, you know, you've lost your way, your medicine's been twisted, like it's not operating right, and now you're having like your thoughts have incrementally been led off of center to where you know you're crooked motherfucker. No, I'm just kidding, but no, you just don't know, you because it gets you get led out of it, you know, you get led off of center, so it's just like that's where the experience comes in too, you know. Yeah,
it's such a difficult thing because I remember there was a guy who still lives in Peru, in Pucallpa, and he's been there for a long time. And he used to diet with Jorge and Luzmila. And so he would just diet Noyarao, Noyarao month after month after month. And at least according to Luzmila and Jorge, when there came a point where they would see him in the Mariacion and he had the white kushma, he had the corona, and they said he looked like a moraya in the Mariacion. But he felt like he wasn't learning, right? So he wasn't like receiving the icaros, and he wasn't seeing like he felt that he should. So then he started dieting with a palero, a mestizo palero, other trees. And he really felt like this was helping him. And then Luzmila said, well, he left us for a while. And then we sat with him in the Mariacion. And oh my God, he looked like a monkey. He had lost his kushma and he had like a tail. And she's like, he looked like a monkey in the Mariacion. Probably the guy doesn't consider himself like a monkey in the Mariacion, but that's what she saw. So it's like, it's so difficult also, I think, maybe for people who knows, maybe they are off the track. But then sometimes maybe they don't even know they're off the track. So it's like, it's a tricky thing, right?
Yeah, so how do you know? Right?
Yeah.
I mean, for me, it goes back to, bringing it all back around to why it began, It's like, are people getting better? Are you not violating your values that you've held for a long time, if you had them when you started? But, yeah, I mean, and just a lot of time, experience, good teachers, good friends, good students, yeah. And I think also like remembering that the outcome of medicine, the goal, so to speak, is not just more medicine. When your medicine work flourishes into all kinds of sectors of life and society and helping and healing that aren't just ceremony, ayahuasca, dieting, like when it starts to just penetrate out, if you're on a kind of crooked path or it's not healthy, there's other realms of life that will let you know too.
Right.
This thing stopped jiving.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. I think that's part of that story too, of losing one's way and being found again, you know, and finding themselves again, and redemption, and right. I mean, it's definitely the medicina de Perón. You know, it's definitely a lot of forgiveness there too, right?
Right.
If you want it.
Yeah.
So I try to balance between, you know, I don't want to discourage anybody or over encourage, I guess, you know. So I don't know what to do with that, you know. It's like you can go off path, you know, if you have a path to the start, and but you could also never get on a path. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Oh man, so good to hear all these stories and kind of have them stimulate lines of different thought and contemplation. I really appreciated your sharing around your standards around the ethics, and how confusing that can be, you know, because I don't know. I guess that this is a question. I don't know what the question is, but I feel like there's a question inside me that wants to be asked, which is something to do with how the fuck do we navigate these really complicated, like these relationships that can be really complicated when we really love the plants and the medicine and we want to be connected to lineage and receive teachings, but there's also, you know, in my experience anyway, like the human element of being with a teacher can be really challenging, you know, and so far that's been true for a lot of other people I know with other teachers as well, like the ethical, whether it's like defensive medicine with using shitana or like literally like touching up women or alcoholism or abuses, you know, like what do you do? What do you do with that kind of stuff? And that's been, that was so hard for me to navigate and swallow. And
Yeah, and also I wonder for the students who know about those things and who choose to ignore it and continue, whether out of loyalty or just because they feel like I'm just really learning from him, so I'll just put all this other stuff aside and just focus on what I'm getting from the teacher. So what's the long-term impact on those students as well? Maybe it depends on the student. I don't know.
I had to part ways with a teacher I loved a lot that healed me a lot, like did a lot of healing for me, but he was starting to get touchy feely with. I start to hear different situations, you know, and I just couldn't be a part of it. So, you know, but it was really sad, you know, in all kinds of ways. I tried to talk to him about it, tried to like engage with him, tried to teach him, you know, or that sounds so. I tried to teach him, you know. It just sounds so. Well, there's something to learn from us too, right? You know, we're not. So maybe that's the train of thought. You know, is I used to always think that the Shipibos did everything for me, and that my teachers did this. And my first teacher I told you about in New Mexico used to always say to me, he's like, "You're a big part of it too, dude. You know, you're like in this, like, it's not all just like all these other things moving you around, and like you're doing. It's like there's people are getting healing from Michael too. You know, it's like a big part of it, right? So we do have something to bring to the table. And I mean, for us, a lot of that's ethical sense, right? You know, I mean, a lot of the ethics around money and sex are really important. That's the understatement of the year, but it's really important because it's very counter to the healing of trauma, which is what we're up against. And when I say trauma, I mean brutality. And brutality is perpetrated by people, right? So these are relationships that need to serve to heal past brutal relationships, experiences of brutality, and it muddies the water in a huge way that makes people's healing. I mean, you could set someone back even further than where they were at with the wrong shit at the wrong time. You know? And what a loss. Obviously, it's a tragedy for the individual seeking healing. Yes, you know, that's an obvious fact, but what a loss that the true potential, you know, of this could be just totally maligned and its honor degraded, you know. Well, I don't mean to like assess you or anything, so forgive me, but
no, it's fine.
But it's common thing is our kind of desire for power and to learn, that we're so afraid that we're going to lose out on getting this thing that we really, 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 really want, to where we find ourselves like, was it that bad? Or, you know, did I fail the test? Or, you know what I mean? When I do believe that your medicine, you know, will always come to you, that there can be no real impediment to that ultimately. And that's why I was talking in the beginning, that you become that which you sought. You know, so that's who you are now, you know, is what you were seeking in those times of vulnerability and pain, right? That's who you've become. And that's what you offer to people. So, silver lining, I guess.
Definitely.
Thank you. Yeah. Wow, what a challenging path.
I hopped camp a lot, you know, as far as teachers. That's why I said, and you know, in the beginning I said I have 32 people I considered to have been my teachers, but some of them is because I was like, you know, skipping out on, and others because I was skipping to them, you know. It's like I would study with someone until I, you know, sometimes I get to a point where I would discover a fallibility, and a lot of it could be accepted, but
I think you just have to know what
there's certain lines, right?
Accept.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's good for people to know, you know, like that you can reject things. You know, I think Pancho telling me that in the beginning was really helpful, right? I think a lot of people go into it as this is all something happening to me, whereas the experience of the medicine is dynamic, and it's more of a conversation and dance than an effect of a substance or something, right? So people undervalue their impact, I guess. Does that make sense? I don't know.
Yeah, definitely.
So, you know, now in this position with all your experience, right? You know, there's a lot to teach and for people to learn, you know, about those things. I've always wanted to do ethical business classes, you know, and stuff like that in Shipibo if I could, you know, set up like little workshops and stuff. I wanted to do. I would love to be involved in that kind of stuff where, you know, set like trainings like that people do in business, you know, they have like little trainings, you know, and meetings and stuff, but figuring out how to do those in Shipibo, I'm sure it's already happening, but with certain topics like
Yeah.
Enculturation, the allure of the city, and the possible dangers and stuff. Not in a way that's kind of the white savior trip, but just public service announcement type stuff,
Yeah.
But and then business and like ethics, it's like yeah, I tried to teach one of my teachers about money, and I was trying to tell him that if he wasn't so aggressive about it, like that it would come to him more, kind of thing.
Yeah, these kind of skills, soft skills.
And then, he kind of ended up dying because of it, it's like, that's what got him in the end.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, Michael. I feel like I learned the hard way that many of the things I heard or was told came with a pinch of salt. Not just my Shipibo teachers, but the mestizos that I studied with beforehand as well. Like, you can feel it when something feels like authentic or real that you're being told, and if someone's just waxing your car,
Waxing your car, that's a good one. That's one thing I appreciated about Antonio, is that he said it was a decision of the individual, and he put a lot of stress on decision making, that you have choices. And because a lot of people, and not just in ceremony, but in general, they want a reduction of the burden of decision. A lot of people in our Western northern cultures, they just don't like mistakes. Errors are terrifying and shake them to their core, and which is interesting because it's really the only path to wisdom, right? So you really have to embrace it. But it's, I mean, I teach people who come to ceremony, that sometimes you'll get guidance, but it's not really it's not about that. It's about working that decision-making muscle and making good decisions, and learning how to do that. So it kind of doesn't matter, what people say or what they don't, as far as like, running ceremony. It's a proper decision is a proper decision, right? And with I think some people haven't fully experienced like the tremendous depth or what it can be. So it's like, in a superficial lens, it's like, yeah, I can handle that. I can do that.
Right.
But when you get deeper into it, it's like, oh, I don't know if I ever could, like that kind of thing, right? But that's why, the encouraging and discouraging part is a really careful balance, right? Because don't want to like shut people down that are on the path, but we also don't want to encourage like kind of just laissez-faire approach to it. I think some minimal guidelines of safety, ethics, kind of like what's been laid out by the ADF in their criteria of defense, is really spot on. For myself, I work by donation. It's non-compulsory, and nobody's ever refused, if they can't contribute, or like that type of thing, on the financial end, yeah, I mean, So there needs to be
That's
some
really inspiring.
basic minimal type what's safe, right? To encourage, like, I do like that some people have coined the term, that there's a difference between like facilitators and curanderos or maestros, right? There can be people probably, facilitating safe ceremonies that are maybe not, like a maestro. I hold space for that, right? And anything can happen, right? And there's self-made shamans for sure. You gotta hold possibility for that too. But yeah, establishing and amplifying kind of a culture of respect that protects people. Yeah.
For me, I would love to see a little bit more kind of conversation or distinction. I don't know if the word is distinction or not, but between walking the path in order to become a healer, a curandero, like working and healing others, and doing dietas and drinking medicine in order to heal the wounds, like the wounds of our culture. For example, I really feel like the discipline of Dieta is some of the most potent and powerful medicine for healing what I perceive to be the separation consciousness at the kind of core of many of the dysfunctions that we have in the world today, including our overconsumption of resources and the rampant environmental destruction leading to possibly apocalypse. Who the fuck knows?
Yeah.
And so I really feel like, regardless of whether you want to work as a curandero at some point, just that discipline for me was just such a powerful reclamation of what I call like animist consciousness, like being able to kind of perceive the livingness in the world again, and relearning a framework for being in relationship with other than humans. And so for me, like, that is one of the things I'm most passionate in the world about. I don't even call it curanderismo anymore. Like, it's the learning how to be in relationship with the other than humans again. And like, a part of me, I made a post on the group the other day about the kind of online Dieta phenomenon that's happening at the moment. And one of my trains of thought when I made that was like, I feel like we should be kind of drawing a distinction between like the traditional deep learning practices of becoming a curandero, or like the more gentle, soft practices that are helping to heal this wound in the psyche that is separation consciousness, or our forgetting of how to be in recognition of the livingness of the world and relationship with it. And I think that so many of the teachings or practices that we have learned from our teachers in this process of walking the path of curanderismo can have seeds that are transferable and could grow a little bit differently, and reach folks that are not wanting necessarily to be on that path. But I think the danger is if we call them the same thing. So calling an online dieta that isn't really anything, that I have never done one, but I imagine can't look anything like a dieta that I am speaking about when I'm referring to the word dieta.
And I would even say, what you talked about, kind of, rediscovering that sense of responsibility, of that cosmovision, you would call it, and our role to play in that cosmovision, and actively doing it maybe might even be a requirement for Westerners to kind of go further on this path of curanderismo just because of where we come from. You know, so I feel like maybe when, and I can actually even think of a few examples where when all they think about is, I'm just going to be a healer or a curandero, that's my path, you know, like, then they actually don't become that. They get stuck. Whereas with people who take kind of a wider holistic view of their own healing and the healing of the people around them do actually end up becoming healers. So I can think of examples both ways on that. I don't know about you, Michael.
Yeah, I mean, I see both because I knew, you know, right away I was kind of told that I was going to do that work. I was not told that it was going to take 10 years, like, you know, to like get to the point where I'd even do my first ceremony. You know, I think in some ways the difference is pretty like simple, and maybe I'm oversimplifying it, but it seems like those who are destined to kind of be healers, you should be able to see that in their history before they've ever come across ayahuasca. I know for me, I was raised by a nurse. I grew up in hospitals. I was trained in advanced first aid by the time I was like 10 years old. I did like search and rescue when I was like 15. Fire departments, emergency medicine, like all throughout my life was service. You know, there was really nothing that was like the main thread of my childhood and life. And when I found ayahuasca, or it found me, it was like kind of the next best way, the next thing to do that was the best thing for people as someone of service, right? So I think that people who have different backgrounds definitely can do it, but I think you could definitely like narrow down some of the numbers by that. You know, someone who's been working a highly exploitative career that suddenly wants to be a shaman, should raise some scrutiny, right? Because those qualities are there before the ayahuasca. Have you noticed that? I mean, have you noticed?
You know, I don't really know the backgrounds of a lot of people before they got really into the medicine. So it's hard to say, but I don't know. I mean, I was a pre-med student, wanted to be a doctor, and then I basically failed physics and organic chemistry. And they told me, well, you'll never go to medical school because you're really bad at math and physics and OChem. And I thought, man, like, I wish I could be a doctor without learning physics. That would be really cool, but that's not possible in our system. So, that went out the window.
Yeah, there's usually some kind of drive, though, to ameliorate suffering, because that's what
For me, it was vet science.
What's
I
that?
wanted to be a vet.
For me, it was veterinary science, and then after that, it was Chinese medicine. And both pathways didn't fully open to me. They both got blocked for some reason or another, which eventually led me to go and live in Peru for a number of years.
You can see that strand of that desire, to benefit others. It's pretty simple, right? It's not that complex. Because that mind is like, it's a different kind of mind, right? There's collectivism, and that's also how people like us too, we deal with our trauma, right? Is like we're the wounded healers, right? So we got shot with the arrow, venomous arrow, and we seek the cure. And once again, we become what we seek.
Right.
Right.
Mhm. Yeah.
So,
Except we
you're
can,
right.
I guess, except in our case, we can actually see the arrow with our
Yeah.
eyes sticking out of our body.
Right.
Lovelies, I need to go soon. I've got dinner on the stove that I need to finish cooking, and I know we could just keep doing this forever and ever and ever.